Good morning. It is, I wish I could put music. I can play music in the background of my videos because I like to listen to music when I read. But let's continue. Modern writers have generally viewed them with generous tolerance and magnified. Oh, wait. Okay. I had to burp. Viewed them with generous tolerance and magnified their virtues either out of patriotic pride or out of wish to demonstrate how grievously worthy persons were exploited by economic overlords in the bad old days. But almost with one accord, their contemporaries who knew them and saw them denounced them as next to worthless. After making due allowances, After making due allowances for middle class arrogance and the necessities of argument, there cannot remain the slightest doubt that in the eyes of contemporaries, indentured white servants were much more idle, irresponsible, unhealthy, and immoral than okay, I hate that I get Snapchat notifications, but I literally don't use Snapchat. Anyways, responsible, unhealthy, and immoral than the generality of good English laborers. Common sense, without evidence, would in fact indicate much the same thing. Smith would have little of this tolerance for the servant class, nor would Hofstadter. White servitude was a gathering of the inevitable effluence of the casual workers, lumper proletarians, and criminals, of an England characterized by Hofstadter as a backward economy, moving toward more modern methods of industry and agriculture. Only vaguely understood was the fact that white servants, held to be virtually silent on their experiences by the majority of American historians, were drawn from those redundant sectors of English and continental European societies whose economic and political displacements constituted the basis for the judgment of overpopulation. Even quite good historians could be smitten by the ideological prerogatives of their class predecessors. As might be expected, the white servant drew to itself the social categories that had long been a basic currency of Western culture. Smith recorded the points of observation of the contemporaries of the white servants. He noted the attempts made to characterize the colonial lower class in racial and national terms. Franklin said the Germans were stupid. Rarely was any criticism leveled against the Scots. Even though they had been rebels or vagabonds at home, they were looked upon as universally ambitious, industrious, and intelligent. Irish were least favored. In some colonies, taxed or even forbade their importation. This was partly because of their religion, which was held to be politically dangerous, but mainly because of their tendency to be idle and run away. Christopher Jefferson wrote that many of them were good for nothing but mischief. We read that they straggled in Bermuda, and that they rioted in Barbados, and that they would never settle down to an obedient servitude satisfactory to their masters. Welsh were highly esteemed. Smith's inventory, however, was far from complete. It was as well somewhat deceptive, since neither the Welsh nor the Scots were as numerous as the Irish or Germans among 17th and 18th century immigrants. Not surprisingly, given the history of Ireland since the 16th century, the Irish were the primary source of indentured and forced immigration. In the 18th century, for example, perhaps as many as 10,000 men, women, and children were transported from Ireland to the New World as convicts. And again, between 1745 and 1775, according to the Naval Officers' Return for the Maryland port of Annapolis, 5,835 servants immigrated from Ireland compared to the total for Great Britain, London, Bristol, and other ports of 4,725, some of whom were doubtlessly Irish. As significant as the numbers, it was the role that the colonization of Ireland played into the development of English colonization of the New World. And then it has the two dots. The adventures of to Ireland claimed the adventurers to Ireland claimed that their primary purpose was to reform the Irish and to reduce the country to civility and the manners of England. It was evident, however, that no determined effort was ever made to reform the Irish, but rather that at the least pretext, generally resistance to the English, they were dismissed as wicked and faithless. What? It's I think it says faithless. Wait. I'm getting confused. Ooh, oh my god, 102 graves was found. Hold up. Sorry. Listen. 102 graves of enslaved African Americans discovered next to Fairfax County Water Park. I want to visit. Pour one out for the homies. I don't live near there. No, I don't. Okay, it's saying faithless. I knew peoples. And put to the sword. This formula was repeated in the treatment of the Indians in the New World. We also find that the same indictments being brought against the Indians and later the blacks in the New World that had been brought against the Irish. And this is where the term the Irish were the first black people, quote unquote black people, because of the way in which white supremacy is like, it evolves. Like, Irish people were not considered black when the first conceptualizations of like white supremacy came to be. Like, in the basis of white supremacy is Anglo-Saxonism, and then like Anglo something else, Anglo-Celticism, some other stuff, but it's Anglo something. And this colonization of Ireland reflects that the white supremacy is continuously evolving, because now Irish people are considered white because white is in opposition to blackness, right? And then yeah, it's just really interesting. And like how it evolves over time and stuff like that. Like, you can even see it now in the ways in which people of Palestine are the rhetoric used against them is the same rhetoric of Manichean order. They call like the people of Palestine the children of darkness, whereas the Israelis are the children of lightness, and that's that Manichean order of that contributes to dehumanization. And it's like, it's the same thing that was used against black people: barbarous, savages, this, that, and the third. It's that same anti-black rhetoric, and you can see how like the dominant or colonial powers will use racism as a justification for genocide, for slavery, for colonization, or just, and like those different, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like when you see those pattern, you're kind of like, oh, so we all up in this bitch together, and all black liberation rests on the liberation of all oppressed groups. That because it's the same shit over and over again. Because are we really free if people are still being oppressed and subjugated? Right. Anyways, let me move you a little bit. It is argued that the Indians were an unsettled people who did not make proper use of their land and thus could be justly deprived of it by the more enterprising English. Let's put a little tab there because that's important. Both Indians and blacks, like the Irish, were accused of being idle, lazy, dirty, licentious, promiscuous and unprincipled in sexual manners. Weirdos. But few serious efforts were made to draw any of them from their supposed state of degeneracy. The Irish were, then, the prototype for the white servant, and as their own impressive numbers were increased and the servant class augmented by immigrants from Germany and other refugees from the political upsets of European society and their socioeconomic aftershocks in the late 17th and 18th centuries, the vise of intra-European racialism, religious oppression, and class contempts was lifted to embrace most of them. And that's where you see how, hold up, sorry, I have another book open, Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination. Really good, and it like aligns with what's being said here. And then also it aligns with the book In the Cause of Freedom, the International Black Radicalism from 1970, from Harlem to London, 1917 to 1939. When it's I'm like on the part where they're talking about like the Crusader and like Black internationalism, and it's really interesting. But this is what I needed to highlight, and this is how. Okay, let me just highlight because I'm gonna start rambling. Oh yeah. Okay, this is the part which is like how. Okay, let me just continue to read because sometimes I'll start talking and it's like, oh my god, girl, if you kept reading, you're just repeating what they already said, and it's because I already read it. But also, it's really good to reread books because even for myself, when I first read this for class, I think I've already said this in a different video. One, I was going through burnout. Girl, there was so much going on with me. So I wasn't as engaged, and also I was reading off of my computer, and I hate technology in that way, but I love it at the same time because I was able to read a book for free. Okay, this enveloping social order was an ideological accommodation for ignoring or obfuscating. Let's look up the word obfuscating. Nope, that's not obfuscate.
Obfuscate. Obfuscate. Obfuscate.
Obfuscate.
Obfuscate.
Obfuscate. Render obscure, unclear, or unintelligible. Obfuscate. Obscure.
Obfuscate.
Obfuscate. Obfuscating the real origins and the more authentic categories of the developing white working class. If they were poor, it was because they had been victims of massive thefts by states and ruling classes. If they were rude and unruly, it was a consequence of the wholesale violations to which they had been subject. Little of this was ideologically convenient when it was comprehended by the so many big words. How do you pronounce it? Pronunciation. No.
Infinitesimally. Infinitesimally.
Infinitesimally.
Infinitesimally.
Infinitesimally. Infinitesimally. Infinitesimally.
Infinitesimally.
Infinitesimally. Okay. What does it mean? Immeasurable or incalculably small. Small colonial capitalist class that was to use them as laborers, as buffer settlements at the frontiers, or as instruments of discipline for the African populations. It was enough to know that they were the middling and the poor that immigrated as CRE with an accent, VECOEUR. It's a name. Put it. That, of course, was the barest outline of the tale. By the 18th century, the racial mist of European civilization had settled over the social topography of the English colonies, its blanket scattering the realities of domination and remixing their elements into familiar hues. However, in the lower orders, where the mist was thickest and where received wisdom has taught us to expect blackness, the contemporary spectrum was much more complex. The natives of the New World obtained a savage red. And this is like going back to touch on the primary colors of historical thought. It's like red is indigenous. I believe blue was black. you know, blue, black, and like indigo. That's the opening thing. Hold up. That opening. The blues is first come black, red, the last, going out to recome, the cycle, the circle, the red, what reading, did, re-adding, reproducing, revolution, red, old, going out into black and coming back through blue, mood, indigo, Amiri Baraka. And that's showing the red. Okay, cool. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Always. Okay, New World obtained a savage red. European labor a mottled gray. Because like even thinking about like whiteness. Whiteness is a social construct because like okay, sorry for like continuing to interrupt. Whiteness is a social construct where your cultural and historical heritage is ripped away from you and you're just categorized as white. And have you ever heard of those people that like people be like, "Oh, I'm not white, I'm Irish, I'm not white, I'm Italian, I'm not white, I'm this, that, and the third." But because of the way in which the racial order works, it removes that cultural heritage of Irish, Italian, this and the third, like the things that your history to just categorize you as white, and so you all of that becomes a melting pot of gray because we all know that there's cultural differences between people, and because of the history, because of the practices, because of the ideology, and so when you just muddle that all away, it becomes a gray. That's how I'm reading it. That's how I'm conceptualizing the words right now. It's all nice and gray and rainy outside today. I love it. It reminds me of Minecraft. Anyways, let's keep going. Above their heads was a simpler matter. The ruling class stood in dramatic white relief. Maybe I was wrong. It's okay. We'll keep going. I can always reflect on what I just said for a different video. Because I still got to do like a summary. Like this is what I got from this. But I need to like think about it. See, I need to start writing things down. But between ourselves and the specter of that American past are the historical and racial fables that obscure the related exploitations and oppressions of African, European, Asian, and Amerindian peoples during the intervening 200 years. As a means of obliterating these events, the myth of white solidarity arose and came to dominate American sensibility. It was for the most part a lie, but a terribly seductive one. By the end of the 19th century, it had already substantially displaced the past and mystified the relations of the day. It remains in place. Where are we at? 17 minutes? Okay. So let's see how much. Oh, let's just do this part. And then we'll pause and do the next clip. The destruction of the African past. For many reasons, however, it is fair to say that the most significant of the obliterations of the New World's past was that which affected the African. The African became the more enduring. Sorry, I have cotton mouth low key. 1 second. I got coffee. I want to go back to college, y'all. So delicious. The African became the more enduring domestic enemy, and consequently the object around which a more specific, particular, and exclusive conception of humanity was molded. The Negro, that is the color black, was both a negation of African and a unity of opposition to white. The construct of Negro, unlike the terms African, Moor, or Ethiopi, suggested no situatedness in time, that is history or space, that is ethno or political geography. The Negro had no civilization, no culture, no religions, no history, no place, and finally no humanity that might command consideration. And this is really interesting to me because should I go off on a tangent? No, but I want to. You can see the gears churning in my brain, but I think it is really interesting the ways in which, like, oh Jesus, oh actually I have a quote. I'm just gonna say a small quote from MLK, not MLK, Malcolm X. No, I might do it from Marcus Garvey. Let me just find it and then I'll tell you who it is. Where are my likes at? The trash is here. Just as a tree without roots is dead, a people without history or cultural roots also becomes a dead people. And it's a picture of Malcolm X. Oh, so beautiful. They're taking our trash. Like his Eastern, um, like his Eastern, Central, and Western European prototypes in their time, and the French peasants, the Slavs, and the Celtic peoples, and more recently the American Indians, the Negro constituted a marginally human group, a collection of things of convenience for use and or eradication. That was, of course, no idle exercise in racial and moral schemata, since it directly related to a most sizable quantum of labor disciplined and applied in the most extraordinary way. Slave labor in the New World, as we have seen in the pre capitalist societies of Europe, was an inextricable, why can't I say that? I hate when that happens. I mean, I don't really hate it. It's just telling me to like practice my pronunciation. Oh my god, I made this joke not too long ago. I said, we need I said we need to go back to phonomics instead of phonics. Like pho, instead of thinking ph, I did pho. Wait, you get what I mean. And I wish I did it. I wish I said that as like a joke to be like why we need to go back to phonomics. But I said that with my full chest. Inextricable, impossible to disentangle or separate. I mean, it's funny. It's funny that I say it. Sometimes, I mean, that was funny in the moment, but I was really being dumb. But it was funny, so at the same time, whatever, it doesn't matter. It was an inextricable element to the material, commercial, and capitalist development that took place, leaving little to the imagination. Marx, in a letter to P.V. Anikov, had argued direct slavery is as much the pivot of our industrialism today as machinery, credit, etc. Without slavery, no cotton. Without cotton, no modern industry. Slavery has given value to the colonies. The colonies have created world trade. World trade is the necessary condition of large-scale machine industry. Slavery is therefore an economic category of the highest importance. Though Marx's declaration was even then a slight oversimplification, it did make the point that has not only endured but to some extent dominated the attempts to characterize the relationship of slave labor to industrialization. The creation of the Negro, and then it has the little two dots, the creation of the Negro, the fiction of the dumb beast of burden fit only for slavery, was closely associated with the economic, technical, and financial requirements of Western development from the 16th century and on. Let's make a little note. Slave labor. Wait. I should start writing. Here are my thoughts. You know what? I really want to write here are my thoughts on Asada. Slave labor, the slave trade, and their associated phenomena, markets for cheap commodities, shipbuilding and outfitting, mercantile and military navies, cartography, forestry, banking, insurance, technological improvements in communication, industrial production. Example given, metallurgy, profoundly altered the economies of those states directly or indirectly involved in colonization and production by slave labor. And nowhere was the trade between Europe, Africa, and the New World more significant than England. The triangular trade gave a triple stimulus to British industry. The Negroes were purchased with British manufacturers, transported to the plantations. They produced sugar, cotton, indigo, molasses, and other tropical products, the processing of which created new industries in England. Oh, the blues! The blues because, jazz. Black people, jazz. Like the blues and how, what the blues, signify. Let me finish this and then I'm gonna come back. I have a book. The processing of which created new industries in England, while the maintenance of the Negroes and their owners on the plantation provided another market for British industry, New England agriculture, and the Newfoundland fisheries. By 1750, there was hardly a trading or manufacturing town in England which was not in some way connected to the triangular or direct colonial trade. The profits obtained provided one of the main streams of the accumulation of capital in England, which financed the Industrial Revolution. You know what's so interesting about that, actually? When we were learning about the Industrial Revolution in high school, they never said that. Oh, dang. I need to go get my trash bin now. Still, England was not alone, nor the English unique to having arrived to a point where the appearance of the representatives of the Negro race was convenient. One simple measure of the importance of African labor that lay behind the construction of this creature is that before the 19th century, for 300 years more Africans than Europeans. One simple measure of the importance of African labor that lay behind the construction of this creature is that before the 19th century, for 300 years, more Africans than Europeans crossed the Atlantic each year. Oh, more Africans. Okay, girl, I don't know why that took me so long to get. Only the accumulated interest and mercantile activities of the ruling classes and bourgeoisies of Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium. Oh, sorry, I got distracted by my neighbors. I'm going to ask if people need babysitting. Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, and Britain could have accomplished such a massive scale of exploitation. This Negro was a wholly distinct ideological construct from those images of Africans that had preceded it. It differed in function and ultimately in kind. Where previously the blacks were a fearful phenomenon to Europeans because of their historical association with civilizations superior, dominant, and or antagonistic to Western societies, now, and the most recent being that of Islam, now the ideograph of blacks came to signify a difference of species, an exploitable source of energy, in parentheses, labor power, both mindless to the organizational requirements of production and insensitive to the subhuman conditions of work. In the more than 3,000 years between the beginnings of the first conception of the Ethiopian and the appearance of the Negro, the relationship between the African and European had been reversed, which is so interesting, but we're going to get into that next. But because like the Greeks and the Romans, they was like, the Africans, they cool. They're cool. I don't know what y'all talking about. And then there was like, and then after that, they was like, no, they're not. One second. What? Martin Delaney? I need to reread this whole thing. But wait. Let me find the blues. This is only the second edition. It's the Norton Anthology of African American Literature. I had to take this course and I needed the third edition, but I have that one like on my computer because I wasn't gonna buy it. But now I want to buy it. It's so good. Spiritual Gospel, the Blues, page 47 and 48. The blues. At the beginning of the 20th century, observers in New Orleans and elsewhere in the South began to notice a new kind of music. This music borrowed harmonic and structural devices and vocal techniques from work songs and spirituals. But unlike other forms, this music was usually sung not by a chorus, but by a single voice accompanied by one or more instruments. Like the earlier forms, blues, as this music came to be known, involved a compelling rhythmical sound that relied on patterns of call and response from singer and audience, and at times between singer and instrument too. In spite of all the affinities with church songs, blues music was decidedly secular. It promised no heavenly grace or home, but offered instead a stylized complaint about earthly trials and troubles, a complaint countered, if at all, by the hope of better days in some other town or by the flickering promise of an occasional loving companion. Its dances were not its dances were not the holy possession dances of church rituals, but the courtship dances of Saturday night rev, rev, revelry. Oh my god, this one's so long. But this is information. This is really this is good information. ah,
Revelry.
Revelry.
Revelry. Revelry.
Revelry. Noisy partying. And after hours fun that held at bay, albeit temporarily, the melancholia typically described in blues lyrics. Songwriter and band leader W.C. Handy, 1873 to 1958, is called the father of blues because he took a careful note of this form of expression and transcribed its songs. But Handy was more than just a copyist. Having mastered the idiomatic forms, he combined and extended them to produce the first storehouse of blues compositions that were both truer to their beginnings and inventive. Like the earlier blues of uncertain authorship, so widely circulated and often reinvented that they may somewhat justly be termed group creations, Handy's blues was most often 12-bar forms, 3 lines of 4 beats each, the first line repeated twice and followed by a third rhymed line. I hate to see the evening sun go down. I hate to see the evening sun go down, 'cause my baby, he done left this town. Other blues songs vary from this particular pattern, but still are defined as blues because of their use of blues notes and other characteristic blues patterns and sounds. All blues songs involve improvisation, sometimes just in terms of timing and emphasis, sometimes more elaborate reinventation of melodies and even meanings. They also involve particular sounds. Train bells and whistles, sexual groans, conversational whispers, rhapsodies, shouts, stories, talk to band members and audiences, and especially in their first rural incarnations, barnyard squawks and squeals as well. A full discussion of blues would take into account the early southern farms where black singing flourished, the background in African and European forms, the impact of minstrelsy, medicine shows, and carnivals on the music, the importance of dance to the music. Early blues centers such as New Orleans, Memphis, and the Mississippi Delta, the movement of the blues to the Southwest, the Midwest, and up the Eastern Seaboard, and the persistence of blues and jazz and other American musics. Worth noting here is how this powerful form has inspired writers, choreographers, and visual artists throughout the 20th century. In 1953, as a head note to his first published fiction, Albert Murray wrote, "We all learn from Mann, Joyce, Hemingway, Eliot, and the rest, but I'm trying to write in terms of the tradition I grew up in, the Negro tradition of blues, stomps, ragtimes, jumps, and swing. After all, very few writers have done as much with American experience as Jelly Roll Morton, Count Basie, and Duke Ellington. Holla! You know, my dad told me that we were related to Duke Ellington because we have the same last name, because he didn't want to tell us about, he did tell us about slavery, but, my grandfather more talked about slavery in terms of, because my grandfather was a sharecropper. But when I got older, my dad was like, nah, y'all, we're not related. We have probably some ancestors on the same plantation in terms of last name. And I was like, because is Duke Ellington his real name? But that's what I thought. I thought we was related. So I was telling people in middle school and high school I was related to Duke Ellington the whole time. Yeah. It's his last name. I don't know why, because I knew. Okay. Anyways, Edward Kennedy Duke Ellington was an American jazz pianist, composer, and leader of the jazz orchestra from 1923 through the rest of his life. But yeah, I thought we was related. No. And I told people we was related, but like we're not. It was most likely we had ancestors on the same plantation. So that was awkward. Ralph Ellison said that Richard Wright's Black Boy was like the blues in its refusal to offer solutions, but he also penned the following compelling definition of the form. The blues is an impulse to keep the painful detail and episodes of brutal existence alive in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain and to transcend it, not by the consolation of philosophy, but by squeezing it from a near tragic, near cosmic lyricism. As a form, the blues is an autobiographical chronicle of personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. As Murray's and Ellison's words show, to term a poem or work of fiction a blues piece, or to note blues influence within it, is to associate it with modern Black American vernacular expression at its finest. New scholarship is asking, what is the continuing effect of blues on jazz, including avant-garde jazz, and on forms that defy such classifications? Where are women in the stories of the blues? What themes of masculinity, femininity, gender, class, and region emerge in this music? What part do politics and economics play? Okay, thanks for letting me geek out. This is the Norton Anthology of African American Literature. But yeah, I want to save up money to get the third edition. But right now I only have the second because this one was cheaper on thriftedbooks.com. And I get a lot of my books from thriftedbooks.com. I got this one from Thrifted Books. I got this one from Thrifted Books. I could show you my whole bookshelf. A lot of them's from Thrifted Books or my papa or Howard. Yeah. Or Sankofa by Black. Okay. Thanks for listening.